Hello and welcome back to Euro Football Daily. Now, while there have been some glorious World Cup teams, performances and goals, there have also been some truly shocking moments. Here are 10 of the worst. 10. The Battle of Nuremberg. Ahead of the last 16 clash between Netherlands and Portugal in 2006, fans were full of hope. Both sides were in good form, with the Dutch progressing out of a group of death containing Serbia, the Ivory Coast and Argentina, and the Portuguese had only conceded one solitary goal. With talents including Figo, Deco, Cristiano Ronaldo, Robben and Van Persie on the pitch, no one predicted the bloodbath that was to come. Portugal may have won 1-0 through a mannish effort, handing Dutch coach Marco van Basten his first competitive defeat, but the real headline was the brutal nature of the game. Both sides had 2 players sent off, breaking the record for red cards in a single game, and there were 16 bookings in all, as Russian referee Valentin Ivanov lost all control. His performance was so woeful that then FIFA president Sepp Blatter claimed he should have been given a yellow card himself. The Portuguese recovered from this savage game to knock out England in the next round, despite playing without the suspended Deco and Costinha. This handed manager Luis Felipe Scolari his 3rd consecutive tournament victory over the Three Lions. 9. Pepe's Headbutt. Current Besiktas centre-back Pepe is the definition of a Marmite player. The Real Madrid faithful adore the 3-time Champions League winner, whose rock-solid partnership with Ramos was one of the key reasons behind Los Blancos' renaissance after a period of Barcelona domination. And after being named in 3 consecutive Euros Team of the Tournament and being named man of the match in their victorious 2016 win, the 91-capped centre-back is adored by Portuguese fans too. But for others, he is simply a dirty player whose open petulance and mastery of the dark arts infuriates fans the world over. One example of this was his sending off in Portugal's opening game of the 2014 World Cup. The Seleção das Quinas were 2-0 down to Germany after only 37 minutes when Müller went down theatrically after a clash with Pepe. The defender then came over and lay a headbutt on the forward. He was then sent off, and to rub salt into the wounds, Müller scored a hat-trick as his side romped to a 4-0 win, setting them on their way to their 4th World Cup triumph. 8. Lampard's goal. There is no way that England should have beaten Germany in the 2010 World Cup. Irrespective of the disallowed goal, this was a Germany squad of superb ability, with 8 of their 11 starting the World Cup final 4 years later. But for a brief moment, it looked like England's first competitive victory over their arch-rivals in 9 years could be on. West Ham defender Matthew Upton had got his side back to 2-1 before Lampard scored a beautiful lofted finish off the bar. But to the surprise of the 40,000 watching fans, both sets of players, coaching staff and the millions watching around the world, Uruguayan official Jorge Larionda waved play on. Joachim Löw's side may have felt a measure of justice 44 years on from Jeff Hurst's goal in the 1966 World Cup final, and 2 Müller goals in 3 minutes saw his side progress 4-1. 7. Suarez's Bite. Luis Suarez has definitely grown up since his transfer to Barcelona in July 2014. Not only has he scored a staggering 152 goals in 198 games, but he hasn't received a single red card and has only been suspended for 8 games in the last 3 seasons, compared to 11 in his final season on Merseyside alone. But he certainly shamed himself at the 2014 World Cup. Having failed to recover from knee surgery to play in their opening game, his 2 goals against England eliminated them and set up a must-win game against Italy. Both sides were struggling in the Natal heat, and frustrated after missing a 1-on-1, Suarez inexplicably bit into Chiellini's shoulder. Despite the Italians showing referee Marco Rodriguez the bite marks, he only offered the Azzurri a free kick. Godin scored the winner a few minutes later, and they were eliminated by Colombia in the next round. But the furore rumbled on, with Suarez banned for 9 internationals, all football for 4 months, and fined £80,000. But despite all the evidence, then Uruguay president Jose Mujica labelled FIFA fascists and a bunch of old sons of 6. Zuniga's foul. In January 2018, right-back Juan Zuniga returned to his boyhood club, Colombia's Atlético Nacional, after 9 years in Napoli, where he made 162 appearances and won 2 Copa Italias. But most people will associate him with an incident 2 minutes from the end of Colombia's quarter-final clash against Brazil in 2014. With the hosts 2-1 up, Zuniga kneed Neymar in the back, fracturing his vertebrae and ensuring Brazil would be without their talisman, who had scored 4 and assisted 1 up to that point. Zuniga wasn't even carded and the backlash was severe. The Brazilian Football Federation called for him to be punished, and Thiago Silva even labelled it a coward's challenge. Not only that, but the fullback and his family were racially abused and sent death threats on social media, forcing the Colombian Football Federation to offer Zuniga personal security protection. The challenge, regardless whether it was fair, marred Zuniga's reputation and deprived the World Cup of that edition's most outstanding player to that point. 5. Rattin's tongue. For many nations, the 1966 World Cup wasn't about Eusebio, North Korea and Bobby Moore, but instead blatant favouritism and ineptitude of the officials. Argentina's quarter-final clash with England is one example, with the controversy setting the tone for one of the most keenly contested rivalries in international football. Still referred to as El Robo del Siglo, or the theft of the century in Argentina, England ran out 1-0 winners after a Jeff Hurst goal, which they claimed was offside. But the moment that lingers was the sending off of Argentine captain Antonio Rattin for 2 yellow cards, the second of which was for dissent. Argentinian media carried a quote claiming German referee Rudolf Kretijn had sent him off because of how he looked, whilst the English media reported a Kretijn quote saying it was because of the violence of his tongue. The fact he was captain and speaking Spanish, a language unfamiliar to Kretijn, seems to have been lost on him. And the situation wasn't helped by Alf Ramsey insisting his players didn't exchange shirts with their opponents, who he labelled animals. A crucial part of England's World Cup triumph that certainly ruined the tournament for the Albiceleste. 4. Diego Maradona. Diego Maradona has a coloured history with the World Cup. He spearheaded Argentina's 1986 triumph before reaching another final 4 years later. But in 1994 he failed a drug test, bringing an end to a 17-year international career which yielded 34 goals in 91 games. But no one game defines Maradona quite like the 1986 quarter-final against England, when his ridiculous levels of skill and taste for theatrics was at its most evident. In a game racked with tension just 4 years after the end of the Falklands War, he hit in a ball with his hand, or as he claimed, a little with the head of Maradona and a little with the hand of God. However, his second was a thing of beauty as he dribbled past 5 players rounding Shilton to score what was voted later as the goal of the century. He scored or assisted 10 of Argentina's 14 goals and attempted 3 times as many dribbles as anyone at the tournament. 3. Baggio's penalty miss. Roberto Baggio met a Buddhist monk prior to the World Cup in 1994 who told him that he would be confronted by a lot of problems and that everything would be decided at the very last minute. This proved to be eerily accurate, as Italy only just scraped out their group, having lost to Ireland, drawn to Mexico and narrowly beaten Norway. From then, Baggio took the tournament by the scruff of its neck, with 2 goals in the last 16, the quarter-final winner, and 2 goals in the semi-finals, setting up a clash against Brazil in the showpiece match. But after a dour game which finished 0-0 after 120 minutes, Baggio stepped up to take Italy's final penalty, knowing only a goal would do. But he blazed the ball over the bar, handing Brazil their 4th World Cup triumph in tragic fashion. The nature of football means that people only remember the key moments, but both Baresi and Mazzaro had missed their efforts, and in Baggio's own words, only those who have the courage to take a penalty miss them. But there can be little doubt that Baggio will forever be haunted by this infamous moment. 2. Ronaldo 1998. On the 12th of July 1998, World Cup host France was set to face Mario Zagallo's brilliant Brazil in the showpiece match, knowing they were to face a 21-year-old striker in unbelievable form. Ronaldo had come into the tournament on the back of 34 goals in 47 games for Inter Milan, helping them to a UEFA Cup triumph. Already capped 34 times, his 4 goals, including 1 in the semi-final against the Dutch and 3 assists, had led the Seleção to the final. But 6 hours before the game, Ronaldo suffered a convulsion, meaning he wasn't named in the starting lineup. But in spite of the clear test results from the doctor, the manager was still persuaded to start him. An inquest was then launched in Brazil, and team doctor Lidio Toledo told the commission if I'd stopped Ronaldo playing and we had lost, I'd have been sent to the North Pole. A winner 4 years later and the recipient of the 1998 Golden Ball, Ronaldo's fit undoubtedly ruined Brazil's chances and denied fans what could have been an epic final. 1. Rojas bleeds. Chile's World Cup history is decidedly mixed. Having reached the semi-finals in 1962, it took them 48 years and 4 tournaments for them to win another game. They finally broke their duck with a 1-0 win over Honduras in 2010, before going on to beat Spain and reach the last 16 before losing to Brazil on penalties in 2014. But their most shameful moment came in qualification for the 1990 World Cup, when they were trailing Brazil 1-0 in the Maracanã. With 20 minutes left to play, keeper Roberto Rojas went to ground clutching his forehead, with a firework lying nearby thrown from the Brazil end. Chile players walked off, claiming they feared for their safety, and the game was abandoned. Brazil were facing elimination when photos emerged of the flare missing Rojas and landing meters away. It was then proved that he had instead cut himself with a razor blade. The ramifications for such a blatant act of cheating were massive. Brazil were awarded a 2-0 victory, Rojas was given a lifetime ban, and Chile was disqualified from the 1990 and 1994 tournaments. For denying his nation the opportunity to appear at 2 World Cups, a whole host of teammates the chance to shine, and for being a disgusting cheat, Rojas certainly ruined it for Chile. So that was our 10 moments that ruined the World Cup, but what do you guys think? Is there anything we missed out? Let us know, as always, in the comments below. If you enjoy this, why not go and check out Stat Wars The Champions and the rest of our wonderful World Cup content. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe.